This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We're now going to introduce our speakers. And again, we're going to do something a little unusual and extraordinary, and I'll explain it to you after I introduce them. First, we will bring forward the elder. This gentleman changed comedy in America in two ways. Before him, you can go back and look at some of what was out there. African Americans used to have to go on stage and on television and shuffle or dance and grin. But some of you all know what I'm talking about. He was the first comedian, artist, entertainer, Ludie Wallace, who was able to stand in front of an audience, white audiences especially, flat-footed. Didn't have to shuffle, didn't have to dance, didn't have to sing. That's the first thing he did. Second thing he did was actually tie political and social commentary to his comedy. And one of the funniest things about it is he would be talking to white audiences, making them laugh, and it might take them a minute to realize he was talking about them. Jack Parr of The Tonight Show, the original host of The Tonight Show. Y'all know Jimmy Fallon today, for all the young people. The first host was Jack Parr, and he called him and asked him to come on the show. And he said he wouldn't come on the show because Jack Parr did not allow, we would call Negroes back then, didn't allow Negroes to sit on the sofa next to him. They had to come and perform and then leave, exit stage right. He said, I'm not coming on because you don't let Negroes sit on the sofa. And Jack Parr, for the first time, said to our special guest, well, that changes tonight. You will sit on the sofa. He integrated The Tonight Show even. Dr. King called him and asked him to join him in the movement, particularly in Birmingham. And he walked away from thousands or maybe millions of dollars by that time, which was a lot of money in the 60s for anybody, white or black. He walked away from all of that to join Dr. King in the movement, sacrificed that, gave that up in order to serve Dr. King, in order to serve God's people. He has done so much, standing up against every war, teaching us about our nutrition, what we ought to be putting in our bodies and not putting in our bodies. And we're just so thankful that he has given so much to us. Please welcome Father GREgory. Give him a round of applause. Before I introduce our next speaker, he may want to do it himself, but I'm going to do it too. I want to first acknowledge his other half, or his better half, shall we say. She is his wife. She is here with their daughter, who is Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King's granddaughter. Last night, we went to the symphony. How many of you went to the symphony last night for Lefferts? Wasn't that something? And the young people, we went to visit them, the young youth chorus, after they performed. And Dr. King's granddaughter spoke to the young people and led them in a chant. And I bear witness today that she has all of the spirit of her grandmother and grandfather and her parents. And so the King legacy most definitely lives on. So let me just acknowledge the family, the wife, Andrea King, and the daughter, the grandbaby, Yolanda King. Please stand and give them a round of applause. Aren't they lovely? So proud of Yolanda. Andrea's husband and Yolanda's father is our next speaker. And this is a brother who continues with his parents' legacy. He's really the trustee of it, takes care of it, represents what his parents stood for, but also speaks for himself. I think we all know that so many things Dr. King said when he was alive are still relevant today. We can almost pick up one of his books, read some of his quotes, and find something applicable right now to our lives. And there is no more sought after spokesperson when it comes to Dr. King and Mrs. King's legacy than our next speaker. And he represents his family well. We have been all over the country together, and wherever we go, people respect and honor the name of Dr. and Mrs. King, but then they want to hear about what is going on in the world today. How are we going to address the problems in the world today from our speaker, from our next speaker. And so we're so blessed that he would come by Nashville, because of course Nashville was one of the major stops in the civil rights movement. The Nashville sit-in movement, and what Attorney Luby did, Z. Alexander Luby, fighting for desegregation in Nashville to the point where his own home was bombed. His home and Meharry was bombed, as you know, Pastor Clark. Even around the same time, Dr. King's home was bombed. And so there's a rich history here in Nashville. And of course, we know there's a rich history in Tennessee, because we know that Dr. King gave his life just a few miles up the road in Memphis, Tennessee. And I often ask myself, and I encourage myself, when I see a garbage worker, a sanitation worker, to speak to them, Harold. How many of us speak to the sanitation workers? Let alone give our lives for them, as Dr. King did. All of us should matter to one another. He led the march today, the annual march that is held here in Nashville to the Gentry Center at Tennessee State University. And again, wherever we've been, you know, I've always enjoyed hearing him tell the story of his father's life and his mother's life. Coretta Scott King, as we all know, was an activist in her own right. And no, please applaud. If it had not been for her, we would not have this holiday. And I just want to say, I'll never forget the picture of our speaker and his mother and his siblings at the White House. I remember when Ronald Reagan said, "I'm not going to sign a bill for a national holiday for Martin Luther King Jr." He said he was a communist. And then lo and behold, I think it says somewhere in Scripture, Dr. Lester, "Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of my enemies." And he sat at that table with pen in hand as Mrs. King and Martin and Bernice and Dexter and Yolanda looked over his shoulder, and he signed that national holiday bill. And now this is the 30th year of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday. 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and welcome, flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood, Martin Luther King III. Now, as I said, we're going to do something a little bit unusual and different. Rather than Baba Gregory and MartIN III give us speeches, we came up with the idea that we would have a conversation and talk about history and today and the movement and both of their relationships. First, Martin's relationship with his father and GREgory's relationship with his friend, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And then what we're also going to do is, at some point, a little later, we're going to give you an opportunity to dialogue with them as well. And we'll send some mics out and allow you all an opportunity to ask some questions of both of our very special guests. How's that sound to you? That sound okay? So that's why we're seated, and we wanted to do it just this way for you and do something a little bit different. So now, when the elder wants to speak, you let him speak. You let him open. So, Dick, go right ahead. He's ready to go.
Let me first say we thank and praise God that we've all made it here safely today. And I pray to God that your return and my return will be equally as safe. I came out and I was thinking about your father and that movement. And no, I'm kidding. Don't understand. You know what that is.
I'm the one got you the wrong way. Yeah.
And let me just say this now. Had it not been for that great movement and the courage and people willing to die, not willing to kill, I wonder how many of you all would not be here. How many of you all would not be here? And that movement came out of the church. There's a difference between the church and the universal God. The church can rub my hands when they're frozen, but the church can't make a hand. Understand that now. That universal God, and you didn't have to belong to nothing. The mother and father that put the whole universe together. So I'd just like for you to do one thing for me, and do it every day. Think about where you came from. Not Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, California. You came from that one force. And when you look in the mirror, you can see what you want to see. But it was that one force that did that. And then we messed it up. We said, this woman here is less free than this man. This person of color is less free than a white person. And then you got to start remembering, especially you black folks. You come here and you are elder, you ain't nothing. And I say that because I'm 84 years old. Okay? All that crap you talking about was filtered through a white, racist, insane system. Huh? Not from God. The Lord's Prayer says, what? Who told you that God was a man? God didn't. God never said, I made the sun, I made the moon, I made every part of you. That was filtered through some thugs that wanted men to believe that you something and women you are nothing. Well, just anytime you find somebody like that, say, okay, have a baby. And so again, today, it's so important. This is important because the white racist system give you the story the way they want to give you the story. Rosa Parks, the greatest thing that ever happened, this movement come through that group. And what do they tell you? She got on the bus and she was tired, which means had she not been tired, none of this would have happened. You got to listen to this now when you're taking it from an evil system and evil people. She was tired. They never said all the wars America won because they was tired. And so I say to you, as you open up your head, open up your brain, Now, I'm a little different than this brother. He takes after his father. I was with him, and he never said nothing on camera that he didn't say when the cameras went off. He was that clean and that big. Now, I'm not like that. I'll call you a honky now. I'll call you one thing. So I'm saying this is who his genes came from. His genes came from. And so remember one thing, white is not a color, it's an attitude. And if you haven't got trillions of dollars in the bank, you can't have the attitude. And most of y'all in this room, black and white, ain't never seen a white person in your life. Queen Elizabeth made $360 million every 24 hours just interest on her money. So when have you seen a white person? And if you think the Ku Klux Klan is white, Ku Klux Klan ain't nothing but a bunch of thugs, a bunch of pimps, a bunch of hustlers, and the reason they have power because a lot of black folks and white folks are scared of them. Your father got past that fear. Got past lying on yourself. Black men are the only men on the planet that refers to that black woman as a strong sister, but call his pickup truck beautiful. Think about that. No, brother. Your pickup truck is strong and your black woman is beautiful. Yeah. All right? And so what we're talking about today is beyond. I know how he changed me. I grew up looking at cowboy movies. John Wayne was my hero. And I had me a gun.
You had a gun?
It wasn't a real one. I did it with my fingers. I shot my mother a couple times. You said, what? And as you all talk to these children, think about what you say. My mother told me Santa Claus was a white boy and she buying the toys. Children don't hear what you mean, they hear what you say. And when you tell a black child you got to be twice as smart as a white child, that child hear you saying they stupid. When you fathers and mothers take a little black child and tell them there's some evil white cops that will kill you. As a child, you think it's something wrong with you. Because you cannot believe a cop that's put here to protect everybody would kill you. So you automatically think your mother and father saying there's something wrong with you. Y'all got to stop that. And all this crap you black folks running around talking about crack and cocaine. You talk about black folk, but you never talk about how we get here. And you don't have to be smart to think about that. It comes from other countries. No, you can clap now. around talking about something wrong with you. And we got to start undoing, and it's not hard. I had big money so I can do the research. I blame everything on white folks. Everything. Now, I'll be honest, I know they didn't do it all, but most of it they did. So when you leave here, ain't no such thing as dumb people. And if you don't believe that, go to Walmart. Most of them folks working for below minimum wage. A lot of them can't read or write. A lot of them had tragedy in their family. Go to Harvard and ask some professors, where's your eyeglasses? I'm looking for them now. He got 12 PhDs, then wrote 20 books, and he can't find his glasses, and I'm looking at them, they're right in his top pocket. But go to Walmart and ask one of them employees, where is your baking soda? And they'll say it's in aisle 17, midway down. God didn't make no dumb people. An evil system made you think they're dumb people and they don't look like you. So this is what we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
And so I knew a man that had children and wouldn't hesitate. FBI come up and said, there's some folks going to assassinate you tonight, Dr. King. I would cancel tomorrow. After I got to know King, I know what was going on in his head. If you know who's going to assassinate me and the rest of the people, why don't you go and tell them to stop? Since you know them.
Right.
And so we saying, when you listen to this brother, and people that was in the movement, who know what it was. White folks never heard this brother, one of the most beautiful minds in the world, your father. All they heard was sound bites. All they heard was sound bites. They never heard him say nothing but I got a dream, because a dream ain't gonna hurt white folks. And so again, I just say to you, think about it. And I'll leave with this here and well, is this. You know that the meanest thing that ever existed on this planet, so they say, was the dinosaur. And it kind of bothers me that most of y'all know what a dinosaur looked like, but you know nothing about King. And that damn thing been gone 2 billion years. Let me tell you why this day is important. Let me tell you why. Think about all them folks that hated King. Kill them all. Throw a bomb in the house. It wasn't just for him and Coretta. It was anybody in that house would die. But they never thought that there'd be a day that you would get a calendar. Said 2016.
That's right.
And this man's name's in it twice. So all you evil folks, if you don't want to see his name in the calendar, don't buy it.
On the 15th and 18th.
And we didn't take guns and nastiness and make them do that. They understood who he was after he was dead. And if you're going to get the big calendar, in case your eyes is bad, right here, it talks about the King holiday and his birthday. Then you should understand who you are, where you come from. And you're not just a bunch of thugs and hoodlums and pimps. Welfare. I don't know how you black folks got so crazy. How did that white boy make you ashamed of free money? I don't believe in no welfare on your way to play the lottery. You hear what I'm saying? Brother, what's your name? Huh? Chris. If you was a big businessman, okay? Big money. You can take a prostitute, a hoe, all the way around the world, and as long as you call her your secretary, it's a tax write-off, but they don't call that welfare. You understand? And so what we're saying is when you understand who this brother's father is not that far away. They didn't kill it. It's in you. Huh? It's not in him because he was the son and picked up the genes. It's in him because we were sent here to heal this planet. And they messed with us and got us scared, and we joined it. All the filthy stuff. And so I say to you, you old black folks that's sitting there worrying about young folks on drugs and taking crack, let me tell you something. Black folks, more you all will die today because you hooked to salt and sugar, then will OD from crack and heroin in the next year. Now, ignorance is a mess. You think you covered. If you've been around a crack addict, some of your children, some of your husband, your wives are crackers, hang with them. Don't say nothing, just hang with them. And see before they take that hit, do they go to the medicine cabinet and take 20 pills. Y'all got to take 20 to 40 pills every day before you can eat a strip of bacon. Then after you get through, you breathing heavy, going through all kind of changes. Talking about you, how can you be constipated when you're putting something in? You have messed up this body that the universe gave you. You didn't come here messed up. I had one of my old cousins in St. Louis the other day, 400 pounds. She said, what I have to do to lose weight? She got a big triple cheeseburger. I didn't tell her what to do because she wouldn't have heard me. I said, follow a hoe around. You ain't never seen a fat hoe. I didn't say do what they do, just follow them around and see what they eat. Ain't no fat hoes. And ain't no old fat folks. And so all you got to do is think, feel good. I'm 84 years old. I'm here. Been married 56 years. Oh, there you go. I didn't say I was happy. Were you there when they crucified the Lord? What a cheap song to sing 3,000 years later. You weren't there then, and few of you would be there now. And if Jesus Christ came back to the planet today and bugged the same white folks, they give him the electric chair. Then all of us be walking around with big chairs around our neck. Were you there when they crucified the Lord? And so again I say to you, thank you. You don't have to read. Just be quiet and meditate. And it comes down.
All right.
And finally, let me say to you all, I'd like to ask y'all to forgive me because I created an awful sin the other day. My mother told me, as a little boy, they see them black people out there gambling, they praying to God, they can win. You don't never pray to God when you're gambling. It didn't make no difference to me. I was like 5 years old. 3 days ago when that lottery went up to almost $2 billion, you talk about a nigga praying. I said, God, you know my mama didn't know nothing. So I want to ask you I can do that without prayers. And so all you have to do is stop the anger that's put in you. Or go look at a newborn baby. Even a baby that'll grow up being a Klanman. Even somebody will grow up being a terrorist. They don't come here. Look at them. You don't see killing on their face. They learn that around you. You never had a gun. You never, the vibration that comes off you. So somewhere, as we look at this brother here and his family, think about you, Dr. King. Be a woman or man. Think about that. And think about you have children. And think about the phone rings. And somebody said, nigga, we're going to blow up the house. And your father couldn't call the police because the police was making the call. And y'all think y'all bad. Huh? Y'all think y'all bad. Huh? Somewhere. Just take a few minutes out and think. When you think about all the stuff you waste your time talking about. You know Jim, my man, he just bought a $37 million house in Florida. Right. I called him, I said, hey, Brother Jim, how you feel? He said, I woke up this morning. I said, people getting an electric chair woke up this morning. If you can't think of anything to do in the morning better than waking up, then stay in bed. I have 10 children. I never made a decision after I met your father. Let's go. I never said, how will this affect my family? Why? I was in the military. I wasn't married, didn't have no children. Military was segregated. And if that white boy would have said, let's take this hill, I wouldn't have lied and blamed it on my family. I said, let's go. Your father didn't do that. And that's why we're here. And that's why all the decent people we know came out that movement. Out that movement. And the ignorance, don't listen to what a white racist system tell you. How many of y'all know that 91% of everybody OD today is white folks? How many of y'all know that? Huh? You hear me? You hear me? The number one drugged out state in America is Vermont. Ain't no black folks in Vermont. But as long as they can make you think evil looks like you, then you can never get evil out. Because how do you erase a lie if you've been told it's the truth? And so my brother, to your wife, your family, I cannot thank you enough, because that movement is the cause of me being here now. I'm listed in the phone book, ain't never had a bodyguard. Why? Black folks made me. Not NBC or CBS. Y'all came when I wasn't even funny. Paid to get in and listen to me. And when y'all got through listening to me, I was so funny, y'all pushed me all the way downtown where you couldn't afford to see me. So I have no choice but to come back and say thanks. Thank you.
No, and I think we all should say thanks because of the sacrifice of the King family, for sure. And in that vein, as we have this conversation and dialogue, Martin Dick said, your father is in you. You are like your father. What does, and I'll be very honest, a lot of what I've learned from Martin Luther King III is when I've talked to him about his dad specifically, and even their personal relationship. So let me ask you this: what does your father say to you now when you hear his voice? And we're going to talk a lot about politics, but first of all, personally, Because I know when we thank you as a family, it's one thing to thank your family for what happened, but you still carry the mantle of your parents, and that's a great deal of discipline and even some sacrifice. So you're still, the King family is still giving. How does your father inform you today when you hear his voice about you being a man and a husband and a father, personally? And then what does he say to you politically about what we're dealing with today?
Let me start by just thanking God first for this opportunity to be here in Nashville as we observe this 30th federal holiday.
Yes.
And I thank God, as GREgory stated, that we are all safely here and will return back home safely.
Yes.
Also, let me thank, before I get into the meat of what you asked, Carol Jenkins and the New Hope Foundation.
Come on. Yes.
For convening us today. And then I am so blessed today to have my wife and daughter join us. We don't always, I travel a lot, my wife travels. Our daughter hadn't started traveling on her own yet, but she wants to at 7. So it's always a wonderful blessing to have those who love and support you on a consistent basis, no matter what the world does, to be with you. Now, it is difficult on one hand to follow GREgory because he gives you so much. Oftentimes we miss it. And the first thing that he said, I want to go back to, which was people were willing to die and not, what was that, Greg? Not die. Because they were willing to die, put their lives on and not kill. Think about that. My dad and his team were willing to die, but not kill. You see, we often think that we can outshoot and kill, and that's not the answer. I mean, really, if our philosophy is of olden biblical days, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, most of us would be without eyes and teeth. Obviously, that cannot work to resolve conflict and crisis.
Yes.
There's got to be a higher path.
Come on.
That's really all Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to tell us.
That's right.
There's a higher path that we can take. That God's greatest creation, human beings. I mean, you think about this. Whenever we want to resolve a conflict, we resort to the lowest form of dealing with that, which is what animals do. I mean, you never seen a group of monkeys talking about Plato and Socrates and Du Bois or Harriet Tubman or anything. They don't have that ability.
Yes.
You never seen a group of cats talking about I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, I'm independent, I'm nothing. They don't have that ability. You've never seen a group of orangutans talking about I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm atheist. They don't have that ability. But God's highest creation, humankind, has an ability to think and to reason. And yet when we get ready to resolve a conflict, we resort to the lowest form of resolving it. I'm going to hit him. Well, actually, I wish it was just hitting now. Actually,
Yes, right.
I'm going to take him out with some kind of gun. It's a vicious cycle of sickness that is programmed and promoted.
Come on.
If you want to say we live in a violent society, well, you see, our society programs and promotes violence 24/7.
Yes.
Look at our television shows. 7 out of 10 of them were violent. When we used to watch cartoons, they're changing now, but 6 out of 10 of them were violent. Then when we go to the theater, 6 out of 10 movies in the theater are violent. And then when we play video games, 7 out of 10 of them about blowing up something, shooting something. And you had figured out what's wrong with our children. It's not what's wrong with our children. It's the diet that we are consuming.
Come on.
And when you consume negativity, you embrace and act it, whether you know it or not. None of us are big enough to say, well, I can watch that intellectually and it doesn't affect me. It does affect us. I mean, our children, they are sitting up playing these games all day long. And we hadn't connected, and I'm not suggesting that people don't have the right to make whatever they want to make. The game manufacturers, the movie folk. But we as consumers have a right to say, you know what? I'm not going to support that.
Yes.
That's the kind of day we need to look at. And when you talk about, Brother Mark asked me, well, how does your dad speak to me? He speaks to me all the time by saying, stand up for justice, stand up for righteousness, stand up for truth.
Come on.
Even though there may just be a few standing with you. But you got to do that. Most days I don't succeed. But I get up every day with the intent of standing up for righteousness, for truth, for justice, knowing that there are those who will stand with us.
Yes.
We can't do anything alone. It's all of us working together as a collective.
Come on.
That's one way Dad speaks to me. But I also hear Mother speaking to me also.
Yes, sir.
Because I spent a greater amount of time with my mom. Dad was killed almost 50 years ago, I don't know, you all know where Memphis is. It's somewhere, I don't know if it's up, down, or I'm not sure about geography. I think it's over,
West.
right?
West.
Well, okay, that's what I thought, west. So, I go back to that April 4th day. And when I heard it by watching the news. And my siblings and I were in our front room in our home. And over the news it flashes, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has just been shot. He had not died as of that point. We jump up to run back to our mother's room. Our mother and dad's room, I should say. And Mother was preparing to leave to go to Memphis to be by his side because she had received a call from Andrew Young and Jesse Jackson. And she was preparing. I don't remember what she said at that time. What I do remember is she got ready very quickly, and we didn't have instant news back then. That was 1968, almost 50 years. In 2018, it will be 50 years. All of a sudden, people started arriving from all around. I don't know how they got the news, but they got there. So our home was full. Mom got to the airport, I'm told, and about that time, the mayor of Atlanta arrived at the airport where she was because he had gotten the word that Dad had died. And so she was pulled aside and told that, and they asked, well, do you want to go to Memphis still, or what do you want to do? She said, well, I need to go home and be with my children.
Come on, Mark. Take your time.
All right.
Bless you.
So, take your time.
Give me a second.
She came back home, and she told her, she said, Daddy's going to live with God. She said it in a way that was quite remarkable because, it was obviously extraordinarily difficult.
Yes.
But she never said, she said, look, God, your dad worked to serve God, and God sometimes brings his servants home. So when we see him again, he will not be able to kiss and hug you. He will not be able to touch you. But we will see him again one day. I sort of accepted that. I think some of my siblings were raising more questions. And then in a couple of days, she did go to Memphis, maybe the next day or so, and flew back with his body. Now, I wanted to share that because on April 8th, Mother took the three older ones of us, that's myself, Yolanda was oldest, Yolanda, Dexter, and I. And we went to Memphis. She led the march that he was to have led. Now, remind you, he was killed April 4th at 6 p.m. And April 8th, she was leading a march. No one had been caught for his...
Come on.
Can you imagine the kind of strength that it takes to go into a community where your husband had just been killed and lead a demonstration? She did that and she spoke, and then on April 9th, we came back to Atlanta that same day, April 8th, and on April 9th, Dad was eulogized. And so that's the kind of, when you think about strength, I mean, most of us as men, if something happened to our wives, in that same vein, you know, it takes a lot to be able to stand up. But, you know, I'm thankful for that example that Mom provided. But then, of course, she didn't stop because she worked diligently to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Center with a number of people. She worked diligently with a number of people to help create the consciousness, want to visit every United States congressman and every United States senator. That's 535 people. She visited them all. Some of them said, I'm not just going to do that. But it did not matter because the majority voted. And that's what has already been talked about in 1986. I remember when Ronald Reagan said, I'm not going to vote for King Holiday. And I remember a few days later when they changed his mind, and that the they means the people. And he said, I'll be honored to sign a Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. That's how God works.
All right.
My mother went on another 30 or so years and worked diligently throughout our nation, focusing on peace. In fact, what people don't know is she actually was involved in the peace movement before my father.
Yes.
When she was at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and she would go to peace conferences, and then when she came to the New England Conservatory of Music, and Dad was at Boston University, they began to talk, and the books that they were reading were very similar, but it was her. He'll say, there's footage that says that of him saying, my wife led me to this whole concept of what peace could be because she was involved before me. Just want you to know that. So you don't say, well, you know, Dr. King, if she hadn't been, no, it was something that God worked out.
All right.
And you know, and that's, so anyway, that is, I'm spoken to. I'm so thankful and blessed and honored to be spoken to by both of them. Now let me add this one dynamic because here's where the beauty comes in, I think. So, some of you know this, but some of you probably don't. Not only was my father killed, a year, I know you don't know this, after my father was killed in 1969, my father's brother mysteriously drowned. A.D. King, he was very close to GREgory also, along with my dad. They were hanging buddies, because Uncle A.D. was almost as interesting as Dick Gregory.
Me and him used to drink your dad.
All I said is he was as interesting as Dick. But Uncle A.D. mysteriously drowned. Now this, you may not have known that, but this you probably don't know either. In 1974, my grandmother was praying the Lord's Prayer in Ebenezer Church with people's eyes closed. And a man came into church, pulled out a gun, and shot her dead. So my father was killed by a white man and a white racist system. My grandmother was killed by a black man. So it would have been easy for me to dislike all y'all. But you know what? I'm thankful for the spirit of forgiveness. I want to share something because I'm going to relate this to Charleston. Because you see, when this happened, my grandfather went to visit the man who killed his wife. wife in jail, Marcus Wayne Chenault, and he said, son, why did you kill my wife? And Granddaddy used to walk with a cane. And he walked into jail with my brother and my cousin. And Chenault said, well, when I get out of here, I'm gonna get you. And Granddaddy could have legitimately taken that cane and hit him upside the head, knocked him out. And the guards at the jail, they loved him, so he nobody would have said anything.
Right.
You know what Granddaddy did? No, he didn't do that. He said, son, I'm gonna pray for you, because I know prayer changes things. And then he went on and preached about forgiveness and love. He said, I refuse to allow any man to reduce me to hatred. I love every man. The man that killed my lovely wife, nor the man that killed my son. I refuse even to allow them to reduce me to hatred.
Yeah.
To live and see that example reinforced over and over again is very powerful. And I was sitting in a studio in New York City doing an interview the day after those men and women lost their lives in Charleston, and when Dylan Roof was brought into the courtroom, and each one of the individuals who came up to speak about their loved one being killed, they could have easily said, you know what, we want to go out, we want to get over there and take him out. And guess what? We would have understood. We may not have agreed with it, or some of us, but we would have understood. But not one of them, they all said, love is going to win. Some of them even talked about forgiveness. And a tectonic shift happened. So in 48 hours, all of a sudden, Confederate flags around the nation came down. Many of us, GREgory, I myself, and many have been fighting against the Confederate flag, taken down for years. Nobody heard it. But that tragedy brought the nation together. And for a moment, a tectonic shift occurred. That's what love does. Come on. That's what Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King are about. I hope that that's what I represent.
Let me just say something. I had a couple of tears in my eyes.
I think we all did.
No, it wasn't for the same reason.
I'm sorry.
I was thinking of all the places you could have been today. NBC, CBS, the White House. You leave here knowing something that few people knew. What was the reaction after your mother told you he was dead? There's few people that know that. Hear what I'm saying? You hear me? If you live to be 3,000 years old, you can tell people something that nobody's ever told anybody. What went on in that house? Think about that. You, billion-plus people on the planet, and you heard something today, as close as we are. I'm just hearing that. The blessing. Now, something I don't agree with. Close as we are. Mark said, do your father talk to you now? I started to believe. See, I'm 84. I believe in ghosts. I believe in ghosts. And so, I never said this to your father, because we knew he could die, but we didn't never have that in mind. So I'm going to say this to you, as close as we are, and wherever Martin is now, when you die, do not talk to me. Anything you got to say to me, tell me before you die. I don't want to be walking down the street and hear, Brother Greg. And I hope your father heard me. I told my mother when she was dying, baby, make sure everything you want me to know, you told me not, but I don't want to hear your voice after you dead. And so again, as you all leave here, think about the blessing you had today. What happened in that house? Not in Memphis.
Right.
In that house. Not by people who hated him, by people that loved him. Think about what you're leaving with.
Yeah.
From this brother here.
Yeah.
That you could hear, you people listening to this radio show. Think about what you just heard. Huh?
When you spoke to the young people last night, share with our audience what you shared about your father and the quality time he spent with you and your sisters and brothers and the things you all used to do.
It is always a wonderful opportunity to really speak to young people, because I fundamentally believe that a nation is judged by how it treats its most precious resource.
Amen.
And our most precious resource is our children. I would almost go so far to say that if we went to another planet, or if someone from another planet came to our planet and they looked at how we treat our most precious resource, they might be very critical of us, because we've not always upheld our children. Yes, individually maybe we have, but I mean as a society, are we really creating the best society for those who come behind us and for generations yet unborn? I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves every day, because it really is about regenerating for those who come behind us. But I also said that my father didn't have a large quantity of time, but it was the quality of time. He traveled pretty much every day of the week, and he would, back then you could leave early and generally get back late at night, so we may see him early the next morning. He would leave some morning. Sometimes he was gone 2 or 3 days or more. But it was, when he came home, it was that quality time where we played football and sometimes basketball. I talked about how we also would go to the YMCA, and he taught my brother Dexter and I how to swim. I also talked about the traveling. Dexter and I traveled with him maybe about 8 or 10 times. So although I was 10 years old, Dexter was 7, Yolanda was 12, and Bernice was 5, I did know, and understand what Dad was doing. There's one thing I want to share additionally, please. Okay. Brother Mark talked about our daughter, and there's a little chant that she and I have used, and she led that chant last night, and there must have been, looks like about 40 or 50 young people from, I would say, her age, 7 years old, and some were high school students, it appeared. I don't think, there may have been college students as well, but it was about 50 young people. And the basic chant is, spread the word, have you heard? All across the nation, we are going to be a great generation. And so Yolanda Renee has learned and memorized that phrase. And so she led the chant. She said, now I want you to repeat after me. Spread the word. And they would say, spread the word. Have you heard? Have you heard? All across the nation, all across the nation. We are going to be a great generation. And so I think what that does is it promotes what is positive. If you there's a saying about I am. If you hopefully you'll never say I'm weak. You got to always say I am strong. I am strong. Yes. I am healthy. I am well. I mean, if you start off so I'm broke, I am is supporter. You don't even realize what you're saying. When you say, I am. You have to reject that. And if we don't start living in that vein, we're missing the mark.
Yeah.
I mean, God made us this way. And so we must understand that whatever you say, I am, you become.
Dick, how?
Let me say something here. Please, let us bring your daughter up so you all can leave here. And for the rest of your life, you heard the granddaughter of one of the greatest, honorable people that ever lived. You heard her.
Let's do it at the end before we go.
Okay, that's good.
She's going, Yolanda, so give you time.
And I want my wife to come. Not right now.
Yeah, at the end, we're going to bring you all up so we can, Yolanda's going to take us home. And again, it was just beautiful to hear her voice. Dick, what I was about to ask you, tell us about your first encounter with Dr. King and how he reached out to you and what he said to you to make you quit your job.
That's a good question.
I never had a job. It's very interesting. I watched it, I heard the news. I looked at people get beat up. I looked at old women. Looked at little children. And one day, very important, it was so important, President Kennedy called my house to ask me, don't go to Birmingham. The president. And he said, you know, Doc is wrong. And I said, as wrong as you think he is, and as right as I believe he is, I believe he's righter than you. As wrong as you. But I'm going. And they was ready for it. They talking about killing us all. So we get down there, and it was moving so fast I didn't need to get to talk to King. My plane was late, so the first wave was leaving. Now your daddy didn't tell me about no 5-0s. He didn't tell me about a white man named Bull Connor. The president didn't tell me if you would go, this is what could happen. So I got in, ran, caught up at the front of the line, and we were singing. And a few minutes later, we were being arrested. And when it finished, it was like 2,500 of us that was in jail. Little children. Family members hear this. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I see this little boy, about 4 years old. I said, what are you in here for? He said, Tito. He couldn't even say freedom.
Tito.
I'm here for Tito. That's what, and then looking at it. See, I knew about King. Knew what he looked like, knew what he sounded like. But NBC, CBS, New York Times didn't tell me about them old black folks. Huh? With the canes. Knew they would die. Been living longer than King in the South. Knew what they would do to you. They was there. With no fear. No fear. And then I learned something. A light-complected cop who was a Negro lived in a black neighborhood, had a black wife, black children. But the white folks thought he was white. So he was in the high echelon of the state police. I knew he was black because me and him used to drink together. So he came by and I'm waiting for him to bring that text. He said, I need to talk to you. I said, when did we stop drinking and start talking? So he said to me, hear this, a very important meeting he had left. And that decision was there'd be about 300 Klansmen, white folks, at a certain street. Their job was to block off the world press. and they was gonna kill us. And he said, so I need you to go back and tell King and the folks what's gonna happen. And I said, man, where you put the bottle? So I got me a taste knowing I'm gonna die. You wanna hear something? I didn't tell King or nobody what he told me. We came there to die. We came there to move this struggle forward, not to be scared of death. So the next day, we out there, a couple thousand, and we marching. And I'm the only one in the march that know these going to be our last steps. And then I saw that corner. And we're about 30 feet from there. And as we hit that corner, the cops blocked off the press people. And then I looked on the other side, and I saw the white men with the pickaxes, the guns, the rifles. And I looked at the old black folks who were singing louder. Nobody running. And then they started moving across the street when we passed that corner. And everybody knew what was about to happen then. And then I looked up and I saw the black cop who all the white folks thought was white. He had tears in his eyes and he looked at me as to say, I guess you didn't tell him. And as they approached our side of the corner, I was making millions of dollars. But I saw something that your money can't buy. I saw them white folks looking scared. I didn't know what had happened. Matter of fact, I thought they'd already killed us. I ain't never seen these white folks call us anything. Ain't worried about shooting us because the cops, they brother. And then they dropped their gun. And they ran back across the street, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I figured it out. When you're willing to die, not kill, some things you can't run from. You're a firefighter, and people trapped in that building. It's your job to go in there and bring them out. Not to talk about your wife and your family. But I was willing. I was a soldier. And the type of soldier I was, the type of soldier I learned to be, you don't run. You go to it. And so I realized what it was. See these old sisters singing in church songs, and they wasn't rushing. They wasn't in a hurry. And then I learned something then. When you're willing to die, you're not willing to kill. When you're not angry, when you're not willing to use God as a pit bull, the Lord will get him. And I realized when you have that state of mind, them white folks saw the Spirit of God coming out of us. You hear me? You hear me? They saw the Spirit of God come out of us. And they looked at somebody who they hated that was going to kill us all. But something coming out of us scared them. And they knew they couldn't do it. That's what that meeting's about. And I just want to clear up one other thing. I never asked you how'd your dad, meet your mother. They was in college, and they met their mother. Well, I got my wife pregnant. Had nothing to do with love. My mother said, if you get a girl pregnant, marry. And Now, she didn't say you had to stay with her.
You know we have ministers here.
So my oldest daughter.
Ministers and stuff. You know we have ministers and stuff.
Oh yeah, they know the story. Matter of fact, I was married by a minister. He knew she's pregnant. And so, my 6-year-old daughter, just like your daughter, she said, Dad, when I moved to Massachusetts public schools was better than 90% of your rich private schools. That's not true now. So she said, Dad, I got a homework project. They gave us 2, pick 2. I could write about the astronauts or write about the family. I picked the family. And the first question I want to ask you is, how did you propose to Mother? Now, she'd ask you that, or the king that, he could have told you. There was no proposal in my situation. But the fact that Michelle was very bright, I said, Michelle, I married your mother on February the 2nd, and you was born March 28th. She said, oh, I think I'll do it on the astronauts. Let me ask you.
Yeah, please.
As a youngster in school, how did you feel, not after he was shot, how did you feel when you see students and white folks look at you and say, that's that nigga's son? That's a little child. Saying that about how you feel when you turned on TV. They had nothing good to say about him on TV or radio. As a child, you know, how did you feel? What went through your mind as that little youngster?
Let me answer that in a couple of ways, Greg, because I had several experiences with my classmates. We were the first black kids to integrate an all-white school. And the irony of it is, because for a number of days, our coming to school, the media followed us and showcased it on the news. I think the kids were sort of fascinated initially, but at some point there were some kids who engaged in racial tension. In fact, there was one little kid who would use the N-word. I know, Greg, you use it. Anyway, that's the difference. I'll say, yeah, I don't like. The kid would haul off, and at any moment he would have a tantrum of using nigga, you a nigga. And so I didn't like that. He also was kind of big, but he was big and clumsy. But he was big enough for you to be sort of afraid of him. And so one day he was drawing a picture. A very talented little kid. He was a great artist. And so he drew a battleship. And it really was very good as a replica of what a battleship would look like for a little 3rd or 4th grade kid to be drawing. And so I asked him, I said, what is that? He said, battleship. Well, I knew it was a battleship. I said, man, hey, that's pretty good. And he looked up and he said, really? Now, his relationship with me changed almost instantly, just because of the humanity that I showed to him. I'm not sure that I knew that's what I was doing, but it was humanity because I was being honest and truthful. because he was very talented. But I could tell he had some issues because he was one of those kind of kids that would beat the wall and hit his head up. So I said, if he beating up his own self, I know he don't like me. He don't even like himself. But nevertheless, I still decided I'll show humanity, and that humanity changed our relationship. He stopped calling me out of a name. And so, most of the kids, quite frankly, there was an experience where I was I think I was playing one of the sporting games. I'm embarrassed to say I tried to play football, not because I couldn't play, but just because of what that game represents and does. So I'm sort of embarrassed. I was in 3rd grade, but I think I was at a practice. It didn't take me long to know that was not for me. That game was not for me. And I know this is a big football state and big football country, and it's an interesting sport, but it's very dangerous. But nevertheless, after practice, these kids were in the park. They were big white kids, and they came up to me and asked me, what's your name? And the way they asked me, I knew that, there was going to be trouble in my mind. And so I was kind of reluctant. I said, well, I don't know my name. I mean, think about that. So my mom had come to pick me up. And back then I was called Marty. Now, please don't call me Marty today. I'm an older person. I don't like that at all. But you can call me MartIN, which is my name. Please don't call me Marty. Anyway, so my mom said, well, Marty, what? I said, Mama, you see those big boys over there? And she said, yeah, what big boys? Because, to an adult, the kids all look the same, but to me, they were giant. They looked like, trees, tree trunks. I said, they asked me my name. And she said, well, what did you tell them? I said, I told them I don't know what my name is. She said, well, why did you do that? I said, because the way they approached me, well, I didn't say that. I said, because I was afraid. Now, I really wasn't afraid. I was very proud of who I was. But at that moment, I felt that if I had said who I was, that there would be a response and reaction that I was not equipped to handle with 3 big guys there. Now, it may not have even happened that way. It may have just been something that was created in my mind. But the fact is, it was how they asked me. It was not, hey, man, what's your name? It was not that. What's your name? Well, come on. So my point is, all of this impacted me. And the other thing I used to think was, my dad and all of his colleagues used to go to jail often. So when things were wrong, I just would think that, if you want to get it correct, you just go to jail. That's what you're supposed to do, because that's what my dad did. As a little kid, I really thought, because I'd see all his colleagues and him coming from jail, but it never was jail in a negative way. I mean, GREgory and I have been to jail 10 or 15 times. He's been to jail over 100 times. But he and I have, not for issues, not for that. He ain't never been to jail that I'm aware of for anything wrong, even though he may say something.
We'll talk about that later.
But he and I have been in many jail cells together over the years fighting for injustice. Dad used to say, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I can't be what you ought to be, what I ought to be until you're what you ought to be. And I can't be what I ought to be until you're what you ought to be, because our destinies are tied together. It's powerful words. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So that really is very telling. It should give us all a message that we can, in fact, address injustice. We live in a nation that has chosen to house millions of its young men, and now some women, in jail. I mean, we've got more people in jail in the United States as a nation proportionately than even China, which has 1.5 billion people, almost. We got more people in jail. And then the tragedy is that most of those folk who are in jail are folks of color. It's probably almost close to 55% between blacks and Latinos. I mean, but here in this county, it's probably like 80% African American and Latino in this county, in this city. In my city, it's higher than 90%. I mean, Richard Pryor captured it right. You go down to the courthouse looking for justice, all you'll find is justice. And there's something wrong with that. Now, there's a responsibility on all of us.
That's right.
There's a responsibility on those of us as parents, because biblically it says if you train up a child in the way that they go, when that child is old, they will not depart from that training. Some of us, for whatever reason, have abandoned our responsibility of raising our children. Then there's a responsibility on the government, because the government does not have enough indigent defense counsels. If you do not have resources, then how do you defend yourself? Blacks and Latinos are usually given indigent defense counselors. They can't defend all of those cases. It's just unfair. It's an unfair load. So there's no justice unless you, I don't want to say it this way, but the justice system really has to be reformed. And many of the folks that are there for nonviolent crimes. And of course, racial profiling still goes on right this moment. Every day, young black men and sometimes young Latino and Hispanic men are profiled, and poor white folks. That's who's profiled in this country. And that's what the jail is full of. Largely blacks, then Hispanics, and then poor white folk. That must change.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. You know something? I'm glad we're talking so I can sit the record straight in front of these folks here. You talk about how many times we've been to jail, and we have. How we sit up and talk all night, and we did. But if I know your father, Dave, would be talking to you, ain't no in the world I go to jail with you. Nowhere in the world. But the responsibility, you can't ask for responsibility out of hoodlums and thugs and people that's being messed with. Now, let me give you an example of what we went through. This is a white paper in Washington, D.C. Conservative paper in Washington, D.C. The second most powerful paper, called the Washington Times.
Correct.
Now think about what they did to his father. And those of us in the movement. This is April the 22nd, 1998. Your father was killed 68.
30 years later.
Yeah.
Right.
Headlines in the nation's capital, white paper. FBI paid mortgage on Terry Nichols' home before the world or anybody ever heard of September the 11th in New York. The biggest thing that had ever happened in America was in Oklahoma. I want y'all to hear this, not to make you scared, but to understand what the atmosphere was then and now. Then and now. Here's the headline. FBI paid mortgage on Terry Nichols' home. The government. See, they thought they was just doing it to us. They thought they would call your house. But white folk didn't know that if I can do it to them, I can do it to you. Now here's the story. The FBI made mortgage payments on Terry Nichols' home after he was arrested and before convicted for conspiring to bomb the Oklahoma City federal building. This comes from court documents. This ain't hearsay. Court documents. said, a Justice Department spokeswoman. So this ain't somebody saying it didn't happen. This is the Justice Department woman said she did not know immediately why the government made payments nor the amount. She didn't say it didn't happen. She said, I'm with the Justice Department. Let me tell you the truth. She said, we don't know why they was paying it, nor how much. The mortgage payment was disclosed in a court filing Monday by Nichols' lawyers, and they went in and opened up the paper. I'm telling you this to say, drive-by shootings, all the stuff you see that we blame on ourselves, you ask yourself a simple question. If us sitting right here on the front row is going to get a gun and drive by tonight and shoot some black folks, have you ever asked the question, how come they don't shoot black women? Were you telling me they got some kind of integrity? That I'll kill you, but not her? Nobody will ever tell you that it's organ stealing. That a black man's organ sells for 1,000 times more than a black woman's organs. I know this and NBC don't know it. I know this and the FBI don't know it. Y'all hear me? Not so you can be afraid. You get home today or sometime this week, have somebody take your thumb to your hand. You know what I'm saying? God made this body, not Sears Roebuck, not the police. Do you know once this thumb, they talk about the brain, they talk about how much money you got in the bank, what school you graduated from. When you take that, you can't change your baby diaper, you can't comb your hair, you can't cook, you can't drive. Did y'all hear me? This universal God puts no more credence on this than any other part of your body. That's why you have to take care of it. Don't let nobody tell you you are somebody. You should know you somebody when you realize you come from your mother and father. You come from you when you came through her. And how did that process work? A man's sex organ went into a woman's sex organ, and out of that man's sex organ, he ejaculated 500 million sperms. Did y'all hear me? And the one responsible for you and me and the richest white folks in the world got here the same way. One sperm outran 500 million sperms and got to that egg first. I don't need nobody to tell me I am somebody. If we say when we leave here tonight, we going to the best restaurant. It's a 500 million restaurant. I'm going to take you to the best one. You in for a hell of a eating. So when you leave here today, understand what happened to his father, what happened to all the people you love and like, got it the same way. 500 million sperms, you can't even see a sperm, outran that one sperm and got there first. You are the product of the best out of 500 million.
Wow.
That's
wow.
Know that. It ain't determined by your bank account or where you live.
That's right.
It was already determined.
Thank you, Dick. Let me do this.
How y'all doing? This is great, isn't it? Now,
things, we're going to continue our dialogue. But as I said, we're broadcasting live on Sirius XM satellite radio. Thank you to all of you who tuned in. For those of you here who want to hear it on the way home, this will replay when we're done today. What we're going to do now, the Jimmy Church Band is going to come back and get set up. We held out our commercial breaks, but I've got to take one in about 3 minutes. And while we take that break on the radio, Jimmy Church Band is going to come back and perform for us. And then after that, when we come back, those of you who have questions for GREgory Martin Luther King III can line up at one of those two mics, one to my left and one to my right, okay? And you may want to start doing that. Now we want brief questions, not comments and speeches, please, okay? So you can line up and start doing that while Jimmy Church Band comes forward. But you all enjoying yourselves, right? Enjoy yourselves? All right. And later on, when we close out, we're going to hear from Judge Dalton and also from Yolanda Renee King. The grandbaby's going to lead us, you all, and that's a beautiful thing. I just want to say that, and we'll talk about this even more when we come back. When we look at what's going on today in our communities, the violence we commit against each other, and the violence the police commit against us. Come on. Black Lives Matter. I cannot see your parents being more preoccupied with anything else. Yes. I mean, I just don't see how they could even, your father, I don't see how he could even focus on anything else with the death and the violence that is going on. So we'll talk about that when we return. Again, line up if you got questions. Yes, we're going to get some questions. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's start with our brother right here.
Mason Gables. I would like to know, what was your initial response to Billy Kyle's...
Can you talk? Is that right?
Can we bring him up?
Hello? Yeah. I would like to know your first response to Billy Kyle's message when he said he actually stepped out of the way so the guy could have a clear shot at Mr. King.
And what was the question? You saw it.
Yeah, I wanted to know what was your initial response when you...
Okay, you saw it, so I can hear you.
I would like to know your initial response when the first time that you seen the video.
Yeah, I know that, but the question he's asking me, I can't... I'm asking, give it to me again.
What did you think about it the first time you saw it? The actual video footage when he...
What did I think about it?
Yes, sir.
It didn't surprise me because, listen to this. We talk about how they hate President Obama. They kill white presidents, man. Huh? Abraham Lincoln? Huh? They kill white presidents. Kennedy? Huh? They don't care. That's why I say this group we talking about, y'all don't know them. Y'all just see these old ignorant rednecks. But this go all the way upstairs. Let me give you an example. You black folks should listen to this. Not because I'm saying it, because it's real. Listen to this. Crime is linked to pollution. Huh? Watch this. Polluted water can cause brain damage that turns ordinary people into violent criminals. Well, 90% of us live in polluted areas, but they've messed up our minds so they got us blaming ourselves for everything happened, and you don't see the invisible stuff. I imagine the Jews was doing the same thing in Germany. See, it ain't about no ignorant white boy, it's about technology. Huh? They could put stuff in this room, and you leave out of here crippled and sick. And we keep thinking, because they reduce your level down to that. Let me finish. Listen to this now. That cause ordinary people into violent criminals. Who said that? Master from Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. He compared crime figures from the FBI with information on lead and manganese. What's happening in Michigan and Flint? Lead. 90% of them people are black. But it's okay for white folk to kill somebody and a damn announcer don't even know where it is, talk about he crazy. How she know? Huh? But when we do something, all at once, it's us, it's the family. It's this and it's that. And that's the first thing you got to get out your head. You living in a sick, insane society. And you talk about these young folk. I had somebody call me up and ask me, Mr. Gregory, what do you think about the young black children? Young walking around with their pants below their butt. I said, well, I can't talk about it. He said, well, you got to know, I used to drink a fifth of scotch every day. I used to get in the car and drive. I was committing a felony. So you gonna ask a criminal that didn't get caught to comment on your black children? See, honesty is something else. With you, it's easy to blame stuff on your children. And most of y'all that blame stuff on your children is mad at what them folks on the job did, but you ain't gonna raise your voice to them. Huh? You gonna come home and cuss everybody out of the house. Nigga, this is my house, I'll kill you. That's a hell of a thing to say to your son. Huh? Out of all the people you need to see that to, you will never say it to. And so let me just finish this here. And then we'll get back to the question. He found a link between pollution levels and murder, assault and robbery. Counties with the highest pollution level have a crime rate triple the nation's average. But they got you to believe it. That's you. Watch this here. This is, at one time, this was the third most respected paper in America. Chicago Tribune. March 10, 1978. Front page headlines. FBI memo. J. Edgar Hoover sent this to the Chicago FBI. Use mob against Dick Gregory. The FBI, I ain't talking about some punks in the street. I ain't talking about some little gang punks. We talking about the FBI. Huh? Sent the message to kill me, but let the mob do it. That's what we living with. And so, brother, what's about to come out now is not just Reverend Kyles, a black minister that he was on his way to his house to eat dinner. All that was set up happens every day. Yeah. And now, with shows like this, thanks to this brother, Mark Thompson, this goes all over the world. Thanks to Carol Jenkins. Where's Carol?
Where is it? Because Carol, you still backstage? Let's bring Carol out just so she can wave to everybody. Is Carol still backstage? Carol Jenkins?
She's the one.
New Hope Foundation.
That put this together. All we had to do was just show up.
Carol and her daughter
all
back there.
All these cables had to be put together.
They hiding back there, y'all. They've been humble. Let's give Carol another round of applause. She can hear us. And her daughter, Carol Ann. Let's try to get, we need to get trying to because we want to keep this dialogue with my brother. You next, please.
Yes, Minister Carter right here. This question is to MartIN III. Would your father be pleased of what's going on today? The minister, the father, the son, would he be pleased on what we doing today? Not what you doing, because he know what you doing, but would he be pleased with everybody else out here?
Look, I'm his son, but I don't know that I'm equipped to answer that in this way. I can only say what each of us would say, which is a perspective. The question I would ask is, what do you think that he would say? Now, what I will add from my commentary is that in 1963, we were spending, as a black community, $28 billion. In 2015, this is now 2016, we spent over $1 trillion as a community. But yet we don't have not one black bank with $1 billion in it.
Yes.
Not one. And if we had 10 with $100 billion, that would only be 10% of what we spent. But think about what could be done in communities. So the thing I would say is, people don't understand what I think Dad really would hope that we would do, which was, yes, he wanted us to have an integrated society, but he also wanted us to have a strong community ourselves. And we have abandoned that notion. We assimilated as opposed to continuing to support our community so that it becomes strong, because then we're in a better position to help ourselves, help others, and to help the world. But because money comes in and goes out. In most communities, money circulates 10 times or less, or more, 10 times. So if I had $1 trillion, if I gave every African American $1 million, by less than 6 months, it would all be back out of the community. So there's got to be education that takes place. And I'm not talking about a separate society, because that's not what I'm saying. But every community is able to support itself and support its own. Our community is so discombobulated because we support everything and anything. Whenever they want to create a new market for a product, they bring it through our community. And if our community embraces it, then it gets embraced culturally across the nation and the world, because our community sets the trend in terms of that level of culture. But guess what? We also can set trends academically. We also can set trends in business and other areas, but we're never highlighted that way. We're only highlighted as it relates to dancing and standing on the stage or running a ball, and all that we do very well. But guess what? We do so many other things well, and those things need to be promoted too, so that you can see the diversity of our community. So I think my father would be, I don't want to say perplexed, but he'd be very concerned about our nation, not just our community, but our nation. Because our nation, if it continues to go in this direction, it could implode. We must learn one day how to exist and coexist non-violently, or we will face non-existence, which is what he said.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing too, and we got to move on.
Yeah, but he asked me.
But hold it, brother. The other thing too, because we got a lot of people, I would just add to that, with all due respect, MartIN, and the brother who asked the question. See, I think that if your father had lived, we might not even be in this position.
Oh, absolutely.
He might have helped us prevent even get to this place, because he talked about integrating to a burning house in the first place, and he might not let us off the hook. I want to move on, folks. Let me do this though, because I believe in gender equality. Looks like all the men are in front and all the sisters in the back. So brothers, if you would be gentlemen and intermingle some of the sisters, get some of them up to the front, and we'll get to everybody. But be sure they come up and get in here too.
Let me
I'm sorry. Let me go right here, please, because I want to, and you can respond to this. Go ahead, my brother, because we want to get everybody in. Yes, sir. Okay, ma'am, come on, please. Thank you so much. Tell us your first name and where you're from. If you're in school, where you go to school, please.
Sure. My name's Natalie. I just moved to Tennessee 6 months ago from Pennsylvania. I'm a middle school social studies teacher. And it occurred to me several weeks ago that none of my students, not one, knew the definition of discrimination. So I found it upon myself to explain in the best sense that I could what discrimination is. But my question for you, as a white, straight, middle-class woman, what is my best approach in addressing discrimination in my classroom?
And teaching them what it means.
What's the question again?
What is her best approach
in teaching her class what discrimination means. She asked her students, and many of them didn't know. How old are your students?
They're between 11 to 13 years old.
And where?
They're
Suburban?
here in Nashville?
Montgomery County. So suburban, urban.
Suburban, okay. Are they mixed?
Yes, and actually when I moved to Tennessee, it was the first time I've ever taught a student that wasn't white.
Wow.
And the week that I started teaching, I actually heard one of my black students say behind my back that he didn't want a black woman teaching, or a white woman teaching him. He wanted a black man to be his teacher, and that was the first time I've ever directly experienced discrimination. And so for that, I'm truly sorry.
Well, you know, one thing is, I would just dig up what Dr. King said, and it's not coming from you. Okay? Here's what King said about it. Here's what certain psychiatrists said about it. Do you know how many black folks don't know that I cannot be a racist? Racism means the ability to control somebody else's faith and destiny. And I can hate you because you're white, I can hate you because you're Italian, but I don't have the power to see to it that your children go to a bad school. I do not have the power to see to it that the average cop is not going to shoot your child 40 times. So this ain't just something light. What do we think? It's just like that lottery the other day. If you didn't win the lottery, you won a 747, you don't know how to drive it. The people that do that is trained for it. This country is the most racist. Let me give you an example. And some of y'all can write this down. It ain't long. A black man, okay, invented a cure for HIV virus, all right, and AIDS. You'll know about that. His name is Dr. Robert Gallo. Listen to this now, then you understand what you live with. He filed a patent on it and got it. And if you call the patent number and ask them for the patent number, they will give you 4647773. We've always had this here. That's what you living with. You think we just in some cute little something? Why not?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this again. The patent office you can call tomorrow when they open and say, Robert Gallo, I'd like to know the number that he filed and got a patent on the cure for HIV and AIDS. And they'll give you the number 4647773. Okay, is that simple?
You can say, did you want to respond?
No, I don't.
You can say to your young people, discrimination is a loss of self-determination. It is someone else being in command and control of your own destiny. And you can say that to them. So while you may be even hurt or insulted that a black student would say to you as a white teacher, I would rather have a black male teacher, he still feels as a black student that he does not have any control over who his teacher is. The way you address that, and you should, is by letting him know that you understand that and still doing everything in your power as a white teacher to expose those students to what discrimination really is, and that you, like what Dr. King called the beloved community, are committed to rooting it out. Okay? Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay, God bless you.
Thank you.
And continue your good work. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Portia McDonald Peters. I'm a psychometrist for Uncle Sam. I'm completing my PhD at TSU at this time. And my question...
TSU?
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
My question as a young married mother with 2 kids, son and a daughter, what should I be educating my children on as far as history, I guess before the slave ships?
Yeah.
Well, first thing, history. If I hated you in your family, and every time I saw you, I made you work for me for free, I beat you up, then how can somebody lead you to believe that the cotton I make you pick, I invented a machine to help you out? Eli Whitney did not invent a cotton gin. It was the slaves, and he came down from Massachusetts, from Connecticut, rich white family, to stay with a rich white friend of his mother and father. And he saw these black folks out there in the field with these little boxes. And he went back and put a patent on it. And that white woman was so angry, it went into federal court. And they won it in Virginia. All of this here. So when you sit and you look at history, you got ice hockey was invented by black runaway slaves in Canada. And then a guy named Richard Stanley came and looked at it. It became the Stanley Cup. Okay? The movie industry, the biggest industry in the world, because it controls your mind. Two black brothers from Idaho, Oscar Michaud. Okay? They invented movies, not Hollywood. And it ain't no accident. Next month, you turn on the Academy Award, and the Oscar is dark. It's black. So when you sit and talk about history, what history?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What history?
Let me, before slavery, you might want to write this down. I'm going to go through it quickly. All of these authors, we were the first civilization builders, the first people to interpret humankind's relationship with God, the first doctors, the first lawyers, the first civilizations that were built in the world were built in Africa by us. Yes. Dr. John Henrik Clark, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, Dr. Asa Hilliard, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, D-I-O-P. And on next Saturday, we will be in Washington memorializing another great Queen Mother, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Dr. Charles Finch introduced those to all of your children. That's another thing about Martin's father, because one of his last speeches at the SCLC, he declared black is beautiful. And around that time, Dr. Clark and others were bringing us into our knowledge of our African antiquity and our African glory. So can you imagine, had he been allowed to live and been exposed and been able to articulate all of that history of Martin Luther King Jr., imagine the power we would have in hearing that coming from his voice. So all of those authors you should introduce to your young people, okay? Thank you, sister. God bless you. Yes, sir.
My question is for Mr. GREgory. First of all, it is an honor. What was your relationship with Medgar Evers and Fred Shuttlesworth? Great question.
What was your relationship with Medgar Evers and Fred Shuttlesworth?
I was close with Medgar Evers. I didn't remember nothing. I brought money to the movement. I marched with the movement. I wasn't with them every day. I never seen in on none of the meetings, the strategy meetings. That's like if I was in the military and you were general and y'all planning, I don't sit there. My thing is I'm willing to die because it's my liberation. It's for my children. My first oldest two children, they were 6 and 7. And I said, y'all going to Africa this summer. You know what they told me? We don't want to go over there, they'll eat us. Where else would they learn? 99.9% of the Africans in America back then was here in predominantly white colleges or black colleges. So we're just ordinary black folks gonna see them, except in the movie, Tarzan. I'm not gonna sit and look at Tarzan and them buffoon black actors they had playing in that. So that's why I said it goes deeper than you think it is. It goes all the way into here, and you don't qualify to do the research. I mean, how many people had you not heard this, would believe. And it made no difference if he was black or white. They put age here for a reason. And all you do, because we're not talking about this God thought, when to you young folks, when AIDS first hit the world, it was only two places, San Francisco and New York. I said, what about all the other white gays? See, they had everybody believe it was a white thing. Yeah. Like preachers was preaching in church. Yeah. This is God punishing you. Well, I said, okay, but what about the white gays in Gooseneck, Tennessee? How come they not getting it? And then after they put it out there, then they sent it to Africa. Right. Then they brought it into the black community. Mm-hmm. That's what this is about. But first you got to understand how evil this system is. Yes, sir. And what they will do, and in a minute before we leave here, I'm going to show you the difference between the church and the universal God. The church eased us through. Most of us wouldn't be here because your mother and father. I'm born and raised in St. Louis. And if a friend of mine died in Memphis or Mississippi, we had to call the black preacher to get a P route. Because back then, it wasn't only the buses, the restaurants. Plus, you couldn't be in your car on the highway sleep. You'd get killed. So we called the black minister. He said, I'm coming to Mississippi. Here's the route we're going to take. And when we got there, they met us, carried us to the house, had a bed ready for us to sleep in, had food for us, and stuff. That was the black church, not Sears and Roebuck, not the United States government. So I'm saying, when you understand the role of the black church, but there are black churches and Catholic churches. If you was a dope pusher and gave them $1 billion, I don't know none of them would change it down. But the real universal force that made everything is not going to take your filthy money. Okay? And that one will tell you. And let me just say this quickly. 9 of the richest, educated, most powerful white folks on the planet had a meeting at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago in 1923. The most powerful white men on the planet. Number 1, George Schwab, president of the largest steel company. Okay? Samuel Inson, president of the largest utility company. Next was Samuel Hobson, president of the largest gas company. The next one, Arthur Custer, the greatest wheat speculator. That meant fed people all over the world, determined who's going to eat and who's not going to eat. That's how powerful they was. And I'm telling you this to show you, y'all can play around, but you ain't going to play around with the force that made the sun and the moon and already into speculate of saying made. So when you think you slicking somebody, anybody can slick the church. Anybody can slick your mama and your dad. But once you understand, and let me just finish this with Richard Whitney, president of the New York Stock Exchange. Albert Ford, a billionaire, multi in the president's cabinet. Okay? The next one, Jesse Livermore, the greatest bear on Wall Street. Ivan Cutler, the greatest financial, he's head of the world's greatest monopoly. One day somebody said, wait a minute, Leon Frazier, president of the International Bank of Settlement. Somebody said 25 years later, 1940, hey, let's check them out and see where they are. I want y'all to hear this. The most powerful 9 men in the world. When you check them out 25 years later, Leon Frazier, president of the bank York Bank of International Settlement. Dead. Broke. How did you find it? Committed suicide. Okay? Every one of them was dead by tragedy. Okay, all of them was broke. Well, you play your games if you want to. Lord. You can take your little money and give it. There's a universal God that put the planet here. You can't pay that God for the sun or the moon. I'll put my hand over your nose and mouth. For a few minutes, you die. There's no white person you can go to and change that. So I'm saying, all of them had power, all of them had money, all of them had influence. But the most powerful in the history of the universe is the God that put it here. Right. So that money means nothing, and all your little money don't mean nothing, because there is a universal God that will charge you for everything you do good and everything you do bad. And so we sit around talking about rich white folks and how rich they are. They're rich to you, they're rich to the Catholic Church and to the Baptist Church, but to the real power that put it here, there's no such thing as being rich to that power.
All right, but thank you for the question. You asked about Medgar Evers and Fred Shuttlesworth. Just a couple. I want to acknowledge the representative of the organization that Medgar Evers served, who is here. LuTHer Wallace is the president of the Nashville branch NAACP. Stand up, LuTHer, so everybody can see you. Medgar gave his life in the struggle, and what has come out in terms of history. His wife, his widow appeared on my show. Yes. And talked about what was going on. And, you know, we have some ugly parts of our history, you know, that we have to reconcile for. And Medgar was struggling down there in Jackson. And Dr. King, your father, MartIN, offered to help. And the NAACP leadership said they didn't want that. And because Medgar was having dialogue with Dr. King, when Medgar asked for security because of the threats against his life, the NAACP denied him. Several years ago, the National Board apologized to Myrlie Evans Williams for denying her husband that security. So that's just one part of our history we need to reconcile. The other part of our history, Fred Shuttlesworth, the great Fred Shuttlesworth, if you don't have anything to do in Birmingham, get a flight there anyway. Just fly in and come right back out. Don't even leave the airport. So you can hear the pilots say, and when I heard it the first time, I brought tears in my eyes, we are now approaching Fred Shuttlesworth Airport, International Airport. To hear that, after what he gave and went through, just a little old country preacher who wasn't nationally known, MartIN, and he'd like to tell the story how he was leading the Birmingham movement, and Dick and Martin Luther King Jr. came there, y'all. I'm gonna say this real quick. And one day they were in Dr. King's hotel room, MartIN, and the phone rang. And you know, there were no cordless phones, so your father took the phone into the bathroom to take this private call. He was in there an inordinately long time. So Founder Reverend Shuttlesworth said, where's Dr. King? Who he's on the phone with? And Ralph Abernathy said, he's on the phone with the Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy. This is at the height of the Birmingham movement. And Fred Shuttlesworth said, He said, I'm the leader of this movement. If Bobby Kennedy's on the phone, I need to be on the phone too. And he commanded that kind of respect. Yes. You know, because we saw in the movie Selma a lot of times, and this is one of the burdens of leadership. You get called in sometimes, but as a national leader, as Dr. King was, but inevitably, you ruffle a little feathers on the ground locally. And Reverend Shuttlesworth would stand up for himself. He said, I'm the leader of the Birmingham movement, Dr. King, you are my guest. And Dr. King would agree. And so as the story goes, he gave the phone to Fred Shuttlesworth himself to talk to the Attorney General. And now that airport is named after him. So I just would say, even if you don't have business in Birmingham, just fly in so you can hear the
pilot, who 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, is going to be white too. Yep. Say you are now approaching Fred Shuttlesworth International Airport. Thank you for your question, my brother. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Quickly.
I'm Eddie Sneed, pastor of St. Luke African Methodist Episcopal Church here in Nashville. I'd just like to, first of all, I want to thank you for your being here for this forum. My question is, stated in the form, in kind of lay terms, is that Dr. King sort of had a pact with folk that they would not rest until there was freedom.
Yes.
I wonder if you would consider forming or organizing a group that will not rest until there be a significant reduction at the rate at which black folk kill one another, especially our young people, that we go from city to city to folk know that lives, particularly black lives, do matter.
To form an organization. Well, let me say this in the interest of time, and I apologize, our time is almost up. That discussion is taking place, number one. And I think that's something all of us can start to do today. You know, in our locales. Organizing local, because let's be very honest, and Martin and I talk about this all the time. The police piece, that's a local struggle. There's no federal police agency of overall police, not even really a state one. So his father started a local struggle in Montgomery. He didn't wake up one morning and say, we have a national movement. Started in small town Montgomery, and then boom, expanded. Am I right? Yep. So, right in our own locales, your church, the churches, the local NAACP, other organizations, whatever they may be, National Action Network, Rainbow, whatever the organization is, can start right there locally, being vigilant against the violence that we are facing in our communities. So I think your question is more rhetorical, with all due respect, Pastor. I think we all agree it should happen, but we must decide, and I think, Martin, would you not agree that it's not even about waiting on Martin to come show up or Dick, we will come and support. Right. But the next Dr. King is probably in the mirror. Probably in the mirror. In the mirror. And I'm sorry to cut short because I didn't realize how late the hour. And now, where is Yolanda? Where? Andrea King and Yolanda King, would you join us now? I hope they're here. I saw them back. Are they coming? Here we go. Let's give Mrs. King and Yolanda Renee King a round of applause. And you're going to lead us, right?
Repeat after me. Spread the word.
Spread the word.
Have you heard?
Have you heard?
All across the nation.
All across the nation.
We are going to be a great generation.
A great generation.
Say it like you mean it. Spread the word.
Spread the word.
Have you heard?
Have you heard?
All across the nation.
All across the nation.
We are going to be a great generation.
A great generation.
Now say it like you really, really mean it. Spread the word.
Stand up.
Have you heard?
Have you heard?
All across the nation.
All across the nation.
We are going to be a great generation. Give yourself a hand.
You all see what I was talking about? Give her a big round of applause. That is Dr. King and Coretta Scott King's grandbaby, y'all. Did you see that? Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you so much. So proud of you. I told you all, the next generation is here. You saw it for yourselves. I want to thank Dick Gregory. Give Dick Gregory a round of applause.
Martin Luther King III. Andrea King. Yolanda Renee King, who's going to lead us all one day.